There exists a very specific way of moving through life that few can truly comprehend. It's when you awaken to the reality of things in a way that hurts, that wounds, but at the same time reveals an inescapable truth about our human condition. Perhaps you felt this sometime, that strange sensation of being too awake, of seeing too clearly while others seem to sleep peacefully in their comfortable illusions. Albert Camus called this lucidity, and said it was both a blessing and a curse. Today we're going to explore the 5 deepest marks that identify those who carry this painful lucidity, this penetrating vision that reveals the absurdity of existence, but paradoxically teaches us how to live with more authenticity and passion. If you've already recognized yourself in this description, prepare for a journey of self-knowledge that may be uncomfortable, but will certainly be liberating. The first mark of this painful lucidity is the inability to satisfy yourself with ready-made answers and prefabricated belief systems. Those who carry this lucidity feel a deep restlessness before any attempt at definitive explanation about the meaning of life, about the purpose of human existence, or about the ultimate reasons for our presence in this world. It's not that these people are necessarily skeptical or negative by nature, but rather that they've developed an acute sensitivity to detect when an answer is just an elegant way of avoiding the real question. They perceive that most people desperately cling to ideologies, religions, philosophies, or even scientific theories, not because these things are necessarily true, but because they offer the psychological comfort of an explanation that seems to account for the overwhelming complexity of reality. Camus observed that human beings have an almost physical need to find answers, to construct explanatory systems that organize the apparent chaos of experience, but that this need often blinds us to the fact that perhaps there are no definitive answers to the most fundamental questions. The person with painful lucidity lives constantly in this state of suspension, unable to surrender completely to any belief system, but also unable to stop searching. It's an extremely uncomfortable existential position because it means living permanently in uncertainty, in doubt, in questioning. While others find peace in their convictions, these people find only more questions. They see through the masks that society uses to disguise its own confusion and perceive that most of what we consider knowledge or truth are just human constructions created to protect us from the anguish of not knowing. And the most painful thing of all is that they can't simply choose to ignore this perception and return to the state of intellectual and emotional sleep in which those who have never awakened to this lucidity live. The second mark is an extreme sensitivity to hypocrisy and human contradictions, especially their own. This lucidity functions like a hypersensitive radar that instantly detects when there's a discrepancy between what people say and what they do, between the values they proclaim and the actions they perform, between the social masks they wear and the reality of their internal motivations. But the most painful aspect of this perception is not being able to see through others, but seeing themselves with the same implacable clarity. The person with painful lucidity cannot delude themselves about their own motivations, cannot hide behind elaborate justifications or sophisticated rationalizations when acting contrary to their own principles. They see themselves lying to themselves in real time, perceive themselves being selfish when they should be generous, catch themselves being cowardly when they should be brave, surprise themselves repeating exactly the behavioral patterns they criticize in others. Camus spoke about this painful awareness of our own contradictions as an essential part of the absurd human condition. We are not coherent and logical beings as we would like to believe. We are profoundly contradictory creatures, moved simultaneously by noble and petty impulses, by elevated desires and basic needs, by grandiose aspirations and primitive fears. Most people manage to live without realizing these contradictions, or manage to rationalize them in a way that maintains a relatively coherent image of themselves. But those who possess this lucidity don't have that luxury. They live constantly confronted with their own flawed and imperfect humanity, unable to take refuge in illusions about their own goodness or moral coherence. It's a particular form of suffering, because it means always being at war with oneself, always questioning one's own motivations, always doubting the purity of one's intentions. And perhaps the most difficult thing is realizing that this same critical capacity they apply to themselves should come accompanied by compassion, both for themselves and for others, because we are all equally human, equally flawed, equally contradictory. The third mark of this lucidity is a complex and often painful relationship with solitude. It's not simply about being physically alone, but about carrying a deep existential loneliness that arises from the perception that our most intimate and fundamental experience cannot be truly shared with others. It's the loneliness of one who awakens in a world where most people are still sleeping, of one who sees clearly while others prefer to keep their eyes closed, of one who questions while others are content with superficial answers. This person frequently feels like a stranger in their own culture, an alien observing social rituals that seem absurd and empty, someone who speaks a different language, even when using the same words as everyone else. Camus explored this experience deeply in his concept of the stranger, the one who is present in society but doesn't truly belong to it, who participates in social conventions but always with a sense of detachment, as if playing a role in a play whose plot doesn't make much sense. This loneliness is particularly acute because it cannot be easily resolved through common social contact. The person can be surrounded by people, can have relationships, can participate in groups and communities, but still carry within themselves this fundamental sensation of isolation. It's as if there exists a transparent wall between them and the rest of the world, allowing them to see and be seen, to interact and communicate, but preventing true connection at the deepest level. And the most paradoxical thing is that this loneliness often intensifies exactly in moments of greatest social proximity, when the person realizes that even surrounded by other human beings, their most essential experience remains unique and incommunicable. It's not a loneliness that can be cured by finding the right people or adequate environments, because it's born from the very nature of individual human consciousness and the impossibility of truly knowing or being known by another human being in their totality. Now, I need to pause for a question that may resonate deeply with you. If you've already recognized yourself in some of these marks we're exploring, if you felt this existential loneliness or this restlessness before ready-made answers, leave in the comments the phrase, "I feel this too." Your response is not just a personal recognition. It's an act of courage that can help other people feel less alone in this journey. You are not alone in this experience. There exists an entire silent community of people who share this painful lucidity, and each time someone speaks up, we strengthen this invisible network of mutual understanding. Your comment might be exactly what another person needs to read today, to feel understood and validated in their own experience. The fourth mark is an acute awareness of the transitoriness of all things, a constant perception that nothing is permanent, that everything we build, everything we invest our energy and passion in, everything we consider important and lasting, is destined to disappear. This is not merely an intellectual awareness of mortality, which we all possess at some level, but a visceral and constant perception of the fragility of our existence and everything that surrounds us. The person with this lucidity cannot surrender completely to projects and ambitions because they're always conscious of their temporary nature. They cannot delude themselves with the permanence of relationships because they clearly see how people change, drift apart, die. They cannot invest their entire identity in professional or social achievements because they perceive how all of this is ephemeral and contingent. Camus spoke about this awareness as one of the most challenging dimensions of the absurd condition because it places us before a fundamental paradox. We know that nothing lasts forever, but we need to live as if things had importance and meaning. We must build, create, love, fight, dream, even knowing that all of this will eventually be destroyed by time. This perception can lead both to despair and to a unique form of freedom. Despair because it may seem that nothing really matters if everything is destined to disappear. But also freedom, because if nothing is permanent, then we also don't need to cling desperately to things. We don't need to torture ourselves with loss. We don't need to live terrorized by change. This awareness of transitoriness, when integrated in a healthy way, can transform into a special capacity to appreciate the present, to value fleeting moments, to find beauty in the very impermanence of things. The person learns to love knowing they can lose, to create knowing it can be destroyed, to live fully knowing they can die. It's a form of existential courage that allows embracing life with intensity, precisely because there are no guarantees, because everything is precious exactly for being fragile and temporary. The fifth and perhaps deepest mark of this painful lucidity is the capacity to feel simultaneously the cosmic insignificance of our existence and the absolute importance of each choice we make. It's a paradoxical perception that may seem contradictory, but actually reveals one of the deepest truths about the human condition. On one hand, the person with this lucidity clearly sees our position in the universe. We are minuscule creatures in an immense and apparently indifferent cosmos. We live for an infinitesimally small period of time in relation to the cosmic scale. Our personal concerns and dramas make no difference whatsoever to the movement of planets or the development of galaxies. From this perspective, it may seem that nothing we do really matters, that our existence is just a cosmic accident without purpose or inherent meaning. But simultaneously and paradoxically, this same person experiences the absolute importance of each decision, each action, each moment of their life. They perceive that even though their existence may be cosmically insignificant, it's the only life they have, the only consciousness they can exercise, the only opportunity to create meaning and value in the world. Camus explored this paradox through the concept of absurd revolt, the authentic response of one who recognizes both the absence of cosmic meaning and the necessity of creating human meaning. It's the revolt of one who says, even though the universe may be silent and indifferent, even though there are no definitive answers to our deepest questions, even though our existence is brief and fragile, I will still live, I will choose, I will create, I will love, I will fight. Not because there exists a cosmic reason for this, but precisely because there doesn't exist one. It's a radical affirmation of human autonomy, a refusal to submit either to despair or to consoling illusions. The person with this lucidity learns to live without an existential safety net, without metaphysical guarantees, without absolute certainties, but still with passion and intensity. They understand that the fact that we create our own meaning doesn't make it less real or important, that the fact that our choices are ours and ours alone doesn't make them less significant, that the fact that our freedom is radical doesn't make it less responsible. This journey of recognizing the marks of painful lucidity can be transformative, but it can also be isolating. If you identified with these experiences, if you recognized these characteristics in your own life, know that there exists a place for people like you, a community of seekers who value depth, authenticity, and the courage to live without consoling illusions. This channel is dedicated exactly to this, exploring these deep existential questions, offering intellectual and emotional companionship for those who feel alone in this journey, and creating a space where painful lucidity can be transformed into wisdom and compassion. If this resonates with you, consider subscribing to the channel because our journey together is just beginning and there's much more to explore about how to live authentically in an absurd world. Carrying painful lucidity is not a condemnation, it's an opportunity. It's the opportunity to live more authentically, more consciously, more free from the illusions that imprison so many people in lives that are not truly their own. Yes, this lucidity hurts because it forces us to see reality without consoling filters, forces us to confront our own contradictions, places us face to face with the fragility and transitoriness of everything we love. But it also offers us something precious, the possibility of consciously choosing how we want to live, of creating our own meaning in a universe that may not have inherent meaning, of finding beauty and significance precisely in the absence of absolute guarantees. Camus taught us that the absurd is not a tragedy, it's a condition, and like every condition, it can be accepted, integrated, transformed into a source of strength and wisdom. Painful lucidity, when fully embraced, transforms into a unique form of freedom, the freedom of one who no longer needs illusions to live, of one who can find joy even knowing it's temporary, of one who can love deeply even knowing they can lose, of one who can create beauty even knowing it can be destroyed. It's the freedom of one who has learned that the absence of cosmic meaning doesn't eliminate the possibility of human meaning, that the lack of definitive answers doesn't prevent constant searching, that existential loneliness doesn't exclude genuine connection with other human beings who share the same condition. In the end, These 5 marks we explored today are not signs of a pathology or a pessimistic view of life. They are indicators of a rare existential maturity, of an intellectual and emotional courage that few possess, of a capacity to live authentically, even before the fundamental uncertainty that characterizes our existence. If you carry these marks, you also carry the responsibility and privilege of living consciously, of making deliberate choices, of creating value and beauty in a world that doesn't offer them ready-made. Your painful lucidity is also your greatest strength, your most difficult challenge, and your most precious opportunity to live a life that is truly your own.